Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. To timestamp this, it's just gone 2 p.m. on Friday, September the 13th. We have pretty much all the team news in ahead of game week 4, just waiting information from Unai Emery as per usual on Aston Villa. I've got nothing particularly that I want to cover off the bat other than to say it looks like Solanke and Van der Ven are fit. So quite pleased. Looking ahead towards the weekend for Tottenham. I will cover questions in order of submission as per usual up until 3 p.m. unless I've covered all the questions before then. So let's get into it. FPL Don is first. Says, hi James. This season I've challenged myself to finish top 100k without ever owning Salah or Haaland. What odds would you give me? Hashtag play it your way. I like it as a challenge. It's pretty cool. I mean, look, the key there, Don, is you've got to hit the captaincies, haven't you, right? This is part of my problem at the moment. I've got really good options to go against those guys, but I haven't really hit the captaincy yet. If I'd hit the captaincy well, I'd be competing pretty well. So that's essentially what it will come down to. There will be times, however, I think, particularly if those two have got doubles, etc. later on in the season where you're going to feel the urge to want to go there. But I like the idea. I like the project of setting yourself a target that way. Weeks like that are going to kind of be insufferable, like it has been the last couple of weeks without these two players, right? So if you hit the captaincy well, yeah, it's achievable because you'll have a load of players that others simply can't get to by virtue of the money that you're saving by not having them. So yeah, look, if you hit captaincy, you can do it, mate. Also says, would you bring in Eze and Lewis for Gordon and Hall or Roll? Well, a lot of that's quite dependent on who else you got. So, for example, with Hall, I actually think he may start for Newcastle this weekend. But there's a good chance it's a one-pointer, obviously, off the bench. So, who are you playing instead? In terms of Lewis, I think he plays again. But I'm still keen from my perspective to wait till after we got these Arsenal, Newcastle and City's first Champions League game out of the way to get a truer understanding of what the vision is moving forward. That's my personal take on it. I certainly get the will and the want to move Lewis Hall on. And I think where I am wildcard now, for example, I'd probably take the chance on Lewis. But similar to perhaps yourself with Hall, I'd want something secure with it. So if it doesn't feel secure, looking at something like Pau Torres, good fixtures for sort of 4-5, you probably go him over Ezri Konsa, subject to what Unai Emery might think on that side of the pitch. Sorry if you lost me briefly there. I had a little bit of a disconnection notification come up, so apologies for that. But in short, just to repeat myself in case you did hear me, yes, Gordon to Eze I'm not against. Alternatives to Lewis should be considered if you are weak in terms of your cover defensively. Otherwise, also fine. Sean says, afternoon, James. I'm going to wildcard in 6. Bearing that in mind and everything else, where would you sit on Welbeck versus Pedro and Minter versus Mitoma? Currently slightly leaning towards Welbeck and Mitoma. So, yeah, I would go Mitoma over Minter. I think that's clear for me, but there's a reason there's about 1 million difference between the two players, so that needs factoring in. But just on the face of it, yes, if you can go to Mitoma, that's probably what I'd do. On Welbeck versus Pedro, it's a toss of a coin, isn't it? I just think when Brighton's fixtures get tougher from game week 6 onwards, which one would you rather be stuck with if necessary? And I feel like that's still João Pedro, personally. I'm pretty confident he probably will play this weekend. Remember, Brighton have a Carabao Cup tie in midweek where the likes of Jorginho Ruta, I think, will probably get a start there. So I would expect Pedro to play. It is a deeper role. He has looked quite secure in terms of minutes so far this season and scored against two strong opponents in Manchester United and Arsenal already this season. So slight preference for me would be with João Pedro of the two. Rob Pick says, a question I never thought I'd ask, but here we are, DCL or and die. Rob, are you really a Planet FPL patron? I feel like often you some support claim for some insurance that's gone wrong for you or something, mate. Why have you ended up there? And why now? Everton's next 2 games are away. Admittedly, the fixture run does obviously look much better once you got the Villa game out of the way. Why have you landed on an Everton player for now, though, when Brighton have got these 2 really good fixtures? a note, very interesting comments from Oliver Glasner just before I went live about Eddie Nketiah, and saying we don't buy a £25 million player for him to sit on the bench. There was a suggestion that was a behind closed doors game for Palace during the break in which he featured as a number 9 and a number 10, so it might be a bit of a deeper role. But if you knew Nketiah was going to play, Palace's fixtures are pretty good as well. You'd be going there, wouldn't you? If you have to make that choice, Rob, I think it's Calvert-Lewin. The reason it's Calvert-Lewin is that's assured of its place in the team, whereas Ndiaye I don't think is. I think if Everton continue to have bad results, the luxury of someone like Ndiaye might get removed from the team. That said, we all know historically what Calvert-Lewin's fitness issues are like. But yeah, if I had to go for either of those two players at the moment, I'd be going for Calvert-Lewin of the two. But I think the true advice, Rob, would be look at a different team here, mate. Richard F says, hi James, would love to hear your West Ham Spurs combined 11. Thanks. Okay. Okay. How many West Ham are going to have in here? There'll be a few attackers. Okay. Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogie. Sorry, it would be that. I think Bissouma. Sorry, I'm leaning towards trying to put this into Tottenham structure. Bowen on the right, definitely. You'd find a place for Paquetá. I think probably Kudos left. No, Sonny, isn't it? Sonny left, Solanke up front. And there's a case to say perhaps Paquetá and Kudos in central areas ahead of Bissouma. And obviously Jared Bowen on the right. So I think it's those three West Ham attackers. And I said this when we played them in April. I came away from the game and actually had this discussion with Suj, and forgive me, it might have been a discussion we had on Patreon. But I said to Suj then, I said, like, your front three is better than our front three. And it seems to be back again. Sorry, guys, for the gremlins in the studio today. Oh, it's not really a studio; it's a spare room, isn't it? Paul says, "Hi, James. Good luck against the Coffin Bearers on Sunday. Why is that? Because they're wearing black. Who do you think are the best two Brighton assets in each position, defence, midfield, attack, for the next 2 game weeks?" So I'm going to assume this is an FPL-laced question. Best two Brighton assets to each position. At the moment, I think there's uncertainty defensively. So if you ask me to pin me now, the only two I'd be considering at this minute for me is Duncan Van Heck. Estupinan might play left back. Kadioglu might play left back. Could be Jack Hinshelwood again. Joel Feltman is fit, but I don't think that's a long-term choice. So it have to be Duncan Van Heck. Midfielders, it's Mitoma and Minter, isn't it? And up front, João Pedro Welbeck. I mean, it seems fairly straightforward. JP says, hi mate, would you sell Gordon to Eze? I've kind of covered that before for someone else, so yes, subject to what other fires you've got in your team. You also have Murphy and Isak. Also Barnes likely to play left wing. Yeah, as covered. I think Harvey Barnes probably does play left wing again, having played there and scored against Tottenham in game week 3. Jacob Murphy I wouldn't expect to be back in the team. That feels like the priority move, mate, is to sort out Murphy. I know Suja's got him at the moment. I had that discussion with him this morning, prioritise moving that out, and he's going to do so. So, again, in the case of the one before with Don, I'm not sure what his other options are. Your biggest problem there is Murphy. You're going into this week with Gordon, it's fine, mate. You're going into this week with Isak, it's going into any week with Isak, it's fine, mate. So, the priority there for me is to deal with the Murphy situation. At the price bracket, Rodgers, Minter, it's fairly clear those two, I think, in and around that value. JP also says, if so, thinking Gordon and Murphy to Eze and Rodgers for a -4 worth it. -4 means benching Emil Smith-Rowe. Okay, so see, that changes the game, right? So you can potentially obviously just bench Murphy under that circumstance. So the effective there is the -4 to bring in Rodgers effectively is over Emil Smith-Rowe in terms of just for this week. Like, that's not worth it in my opinion, with Fulham having a decent home fixture against West Ham. So no, and it does mean you can carry Murphy a bit, but he's probably going to keep battering you for value, unfortunately. If you keep Gordon for this week, mate, it's fine. Wolves conceded 6 in their last home game, although as we've already been acknowledging through this week, very much changed the system against Nottingham Forest, so I don't think we should read too much into that. Aaron Hill says, hi James, looking to buy Salah next week, but am on Jota and Diaz. Which one do you think is worth selling for the mo? Obviously stuff this week could change, but what's your first thought? Cheers. My first thought on that, Aaron, is why are you thinking of doing it next week and not this week? So I'm trying to figure that out in my head, and I'm going to guess that boils down to you want to captain Mo Salah in game week 5, and he'll probably be the most captain choice within the engaged community. So okay, I get that, but it's still Forest at home this week. We want to get that done now. Could be that it's a -4 this week and it's a free transfer next week. That also would have an impact potentially. But Diaz travelling away to South America and playing, Liverpool playing in Milan on Tuesday, that feels like it would give you the excuse to do it now. And if that's what you're debating, that's probably what I'd go ahead and do. This time next week might feel different. Diaz might get a little bit of a rest over this period. I'm not expecting him to. I'm pretty confident he does start this weekend, by the way. I'm really keen on Jota. I've expressed my opinion on that. That said, the Manchester United game did change that opinion somewhat. Diaz took his 2 chances really well, and Jota felt like he was on the periphery of the big moments. But by virtue of having an OOP midfielder playing through the middle for Liverpool, I think there will be other games where that swings the other way and the chances will fall his way. So I personally am still keen on Jota over Diaz at the moment. Rob Pick has got alternatives to Calvert-Lewin and Dyer, thank God. He says Woodby and Ketcher, and he's used the same quote that I already mentioned. I don't think we can read into that Eddie Nketiah definitely starts this weekend. It feels like, Rob, the sensible idea here would be one of the 2 Brighton players, unless you've been priced out of it. If you're priced out of it, I understand. Also, what are you selling to go there? Or are you on wildcard and you're left with the 5.5ish or so in the bank? I think even with the lack of assuredness that he'd start, I'd prefer to take that and catch a gamble, Rob, I think. DM me though. I'm keen to see if there's a way of finding that money where you can hold a Pedro or Welbeck for a couple of games and move that onto Visser in game week 6, for example. David Fawn says, hi James, hope you're well and good luck in the North London derby this weekend. Who would you bench out, Robinson and Porro? I'd play Pedro, mate. I fancy us to do well. I'm a little bit concerned about Bissouma obviously not getting the clear thumbs up. He's a doubt at the moment. But there's a little bit more of a like for like if obviously Rodrigo Bentancur plays in that position. It's obviously not disastrous for us. I just think Bissouma was outstanding at Newcastle and looked like he was getting back to his best, so I would want him to play. Pedro, mate. Fulham's fixture isn't good enough and Robinson isn't good enough offensively to make me think that I'd probably ever want to play Robinson over Porro unless we were at a circumstance where if the game was at the Emirates, we'd feel a little bit different. Or if Robinson had a clearer fixture like Leicester or Ipswich at home, for example. West Ham at home doesn't feel like that. So, look, with Pedro, you're never really expecting a clean sheet anyway, irrespective of whether Tottenham are playing Arsenal, Leicester, whomever. He's in there for the attacking reasons. Stick with that. He had 7 efforts against Newcastle. He won't have 7 efforts on Sunday. But he's still a key part of what Tottenham are doing offensively. I would be playing Pedro Porro in a fixture at our stadium. Joe Pickles says, hi James, hope you're well. Presume you weren't, but were you ever involved in football hooliganism in your younger years? And what is the most scared you've ever been going to an away match or home match? Wow, what a question. What could I say here about my involvement in football hooliganism here that wouldn't get me arrested? No, I was never involved in any form of hooliganism in seriousness, no. And I've always stayed away from it. It was one of them, if you ever saw something going, and the amount of games I've been to, you kind of get an experience of a vibe in there. Ever been truly scared? No, I don't think so. I remember one night going to West Ham, the last game at Upton Park. Disconnection again, and it's back. I remember a game at Middlesbrough towards the end of the 04-05 season, and that was one coming out of the ground there. You could feel like there was a real tension in the air. Hailstorm very randomly in the end of May. Could feel a bit of tension in that one. Generally speaking, no. No, I think as well, look, I go to a lot of the games with my dad. If you're watching Dad, sorry, but you're an old man. We generally don't look like the sort of people that, even troublemakers are not probably going to want to target people like me and my dad. We don't wear our colours away from home. Kind of stay away from the main groups who might be looking for trouble. So we stay away from it all. So hard to pin. Have I ever been scared at a football match? No. No, I don't think so. No, I think awareness sometimes of all is a vibe here, like that night at West Ham, but generally speaking, no. No. Good question, though. JP says, do you think Man United midfield is screaming for Angel Gomez? Well, they let Angel Gomez go a few years ago. Let's see how Manuel Ugarte gets on. I suspect he probably won't start tomorrow, having obviously had very little training time with the team, and also it's the 12:30 kickoff as well. Beyond this week, there's every chance he'll get in the team, so I'd probably expect him to make a start. And they won't play in Europe this week, will they? They'll have a Carabao Cup fixture this midweek. So I'd expect him to start in that in midweek and then, get integrated into the team. He's a good ball-winning midfielder. That may well make a difference for them. And I think United need that at the moment more than a technical player. Me and Clayton identified that a couple of weeks ago. So I think it's a good signing. David Fawn says, another question, this time non-FPL. Did you play much football growing up and what was your position? If I wasn't watching football, I was playing it, mate. If I wasn't doing either of those things, I was probably chasing girls. There wasn't a lot else going on when I was a kid. Yeah, I played a lot. Captain Sunday teams, captain the school team. Wasn't the best technically, but had the brain. Think of me as a Cloud Makalele, sitter in front of the back four. Tick things over. I wasn't the most skilled. My game intelligence got me through a lot. Despite the way I look now, I was pretty fit when I was a teenager as well. So yes. And then I didn't play for a really long time, and I got back into playing five-a-side in my early 30s. And that stopped quite a bit when my son Harry was born, and it's completely off the table now since they picked up obviously sciatica towards the start of this year. It was right at the end of last year, wasn't it? So no, I'm not playing anymore. Miss X, nothing better than playing football and being competitive. Yeah, I used to love it, mate. Lemon says most likely shock result this week. Well, how do we determine that? Is Tottenham beating Arsenal a shock? Does that fall into that category or not? I as someone who's involved emotionally and invested in that, I'm not sure how to answer that. I guess from a bookmaker perspective, it probably would be. But there were bigger potential shocks on the weekend, aren't there? If Southampton win, if Ipswich win, if Leicester win, if Forest win, if Brentford win, they're all going to be bigger shocks. I don't think I've got one truly predicted. I think of the teams that I might be backing to win, Tottenham might be the longest odds of those, actually. But I'll say maybe Southampton against Manchester United. Reece Ferguson says, Captain Dilemma, Eze or Watkins? Subject, of course, to what Unai Emery says. I'm just checking to see if we've got any quotes yet from Unai Emery. I don't think we do as yet. It would be Watkins. As long as Watkins isn't ruled out. As it stands, many of you might have heard me talking about throwing the dart at the wall and putting some photos of players on it. There's no intention to do that. As long as Unai Emery gives me good news on Ollie Watkins, that's who I'll be captain this week. The news from Sean Dyche yesterday on Jared Branthwaite's likely unavailability is the big swing in that for me. So Ollie Watkins, mate. Stavros says, hello James, and regards from sunny Limassol. My 8th attacker for this week is Bumo, who will be sitting on the bench. My replacement suggestion for Gibbs White, or should I roll? And if so, who'd start? So hang on, so you're a dilemma here between Bumo and Gibbs White this weekend. Maybe slight preference for Gibbs White under that circumstance is my instinct in terms of a start. Moving Gibbs White on, I mean, this 6.5 area has become a little bit of a challenge, isn't it? I think the immediate one in front of the eyes to suggest it's probably got to be Matoma, isn't it? If you can get to Eze, great. But it's probably Matoma at a very similar value to Gibbs White. If you can get there, feels like the one. I've mentioned him a few times recently, and I'm going to keep mentioning him, I think, but I wouldn't hate if you said, I want to buy Garnacho. I wouldn't hate that, actually. My friend Lord Orphicus is in, says, good afternoon, James. Hope you're well. I'm on wildcard this week and would like to know your thoughts on some 50-50 calls I have. Game weeks 4 and 5 only. Welbeck or Pedro? Covered that one, mate. So I'm just going to repeat and say Pedro again. Secondly, or additionally, I also have Eze or Minter. Eze, if you can do it, mate, I'd do it. There's obviously a real disparity in the price in there. For my third forward, would you go for Welbeck or Pedro, selling 1 in 6 for Visas, again, João Pedro, or have Mateta, who could be sold in 6 or also held longer if need be? Lastly, I promise, I'm going to go to Brighton player over Mateta. Lastly, I promise, if you were to punt one, Bowen or DCL, thank you and appreciate you. Someone has recommended DCL somewhere, haven't they? That's what happened. Is it Black Box or something? I've talked up DCL as a prospect. Who's done it? Jared Bowen for me on that one, mate. All day, every day. And not a problem, mate. You're very welcome. Eddie R says, hi, James. 1 free transfer on wildcard for game week 6. Defences Vardio, Udogi and Harwood-Bellis. Quansah to Trent. Then Saka to Diaz next week. Or Quansah to Konate. Then Saka to Salah next week. Or Saka to Salah this game week. I have Jota. Cheers. I think if you're wildcarding in 6, I can't give you a reason not really to move Saka to Salah. Despite, you know what I say, Dr. Tottenham will see you now. And I'm sure Saka will probably do well on Sunday. But I can't, if you're wildcarding game week 6, I can't give you a good reason not to just go Saka to Salah now, really. I don't like the Quansah to Konate move. I would not be surprised if Quansah starts tomorrow. With Konate, we've always known that once it went back to 3 games a week, it was potentially going to be a problem for him. And the reality is Liverpool have a big game on Tuesday. So there isn't really a reason beyond that to think that Konate wouldn't stop. I would not be making that transfer at the moment, though, mate. Greg Williams says, afternoon, James. Who would you play out of Hall, Porro, Gabriel, other defenders, Dunk and Robinson? Porro, mate. To be honest, from my personal perspective, subject to what you got attacking in the 2 teams of the North London derby, I'd arguably just play Porro and Gabriel. Just purely for offensive reasons, mate. Porro is well documented in terms of how he is offensively for Tottenham, and have Tottenham become world beaters in terms of defending set plays. One of Gabriel or Saliba will have a chance on Sunday. Near certainty from a set play. So I'd arguably just play the 2 players from the North London derby. It's not generally the recommended. I know we try and avoid players playing against each other. Is it beyond question that the game finishes 2-2 and those both get attacking returns? I don't think it is. Uros Milicevic says, hi James, what would you choose for 4 and 5? Wildcard in 6. So it's Saka, Muniz, Gordon to Salah, Pedro. Well, you're 1 player short there. You said a 4.5 forward. Yeah, but you need to use this. Haaland to Watkins / Solanke. Solanke, I'm pretty confident now, will play on Sunday, but I'd still be going Watkins out of the 2 at this moment. Muniz to Pedro, Saka, Gordon, Haaland to Salah / Son, Palmer, Watkins, Solanke. There's a lot going on here, mate. It's a lot going on. It's too much for me to remember all these names and these potential moves. I'm just going to break it down. Like, yes to Salah, yes to Pedro, but does the 4.5 need to play? If so, then no, you don't want to do that. Don't want to sell Haaland at the moment. That's off the table for me. If you're saying maybe move to like Watkins or Solanke next week, fine, we can look at that next week. Muniz to Pedro is fine. I wouldn't be selling Haaland at the moment, mate, if you're on, so I just wouldn't be looking at these other options, mate. JP says, when you bring in Bowen in for Jota, if the X-Mins for Jota keep decreasing and he starts playing the Firmin row. JP, what have you written here, mate? I've got a constant awareness of Jared Bowen. They've got a brilliant run from game week 14. He's the sort of player that I can just dive to at any point if I want to. But it's not particularly on the radar at the moment until I become really concerned about Jota, and I don't think that's on the table till game week 6 particularly. And then timing wise, I don't know, Brentford away, Ipswich at home, then they go to Tottenham. It's not terrible. I think most who might want to bin Jota in 6 would probably look at Bumo. I'm obviously already there. Would I still prefer Bowen over Eze at that point? It's questionable. So no, Bowen I think is a distance for my team at the moment. Riley Hagen says, afternoon James, hope you're well. Who's the best mid for 6.1 or under for just the next 2 game weeks? Just the next 2. Minter is an obvious option now. I think Ramsey and Rodgers, obviously at Aston Villa, showed themselves up as potential ones. Under 6, I'd probably be the 2 away games, not Ipswich. I don't mind Brereton Diaz if it's just for the 2, but I think most of the people who've been on him would probably tell you don't do that. Garnacho's above, isn't he? Kudos is above. So yeah, I think it's from that list of names that I've given you. If it's just the next 2, it's probably Minter, isn't it? Patrick Clivett says, would you take Palmer out for Salah? No hitch, just straight transfer. Tried to be clever last week and did Salah to Palmer, and that failed. No, I presume you made the decision with more than 1 game week in mind, and you knew that Salah had these 2 great fixtures now. Palmer will play. He was photographed in training on Monday, so there's no concern from that perspective. I guess what this boils down to is what that value of that transfer is. Because on the face of it, truthfully, between now and the 2 players playing each other in game week 8, I would expect Salah to outscore Palmer over that period. So I can't really give you a reason to say no. Salah is highly likely probably your captain next week as well. The answer sometimes is just to suck it up and say, I made a mistake. And it was a rare one for me last year, but you might remember I sold Bukayo Saka and then bought him back the next week. Because I just truthfully, honestly realised it was an error. And the worst thing I could have done was be stubborn about it and ignore it. And Saka went off again that weekend when I brought him back in. So if you feel like you've made a mistake, you can't change the past, you can only change what happens next. On the face of it, if you're saying, right, Palmer to Salah, I think the influence that you probably captain Salah next week would be enough to say, yeah, do it. Horia Gradden says, hey James, sell Smith Rowe for Minter and bench Muniz, or play Muniz, bench Smith Rowe and roll. Yeah, a little bit more power, I think, in the role at the moment. So, look, I've got Muniz, and I'm going to leave it be and carry through this week. So I think I can only really advise the same. But I don't know what your future plans is. I'm someone like me sitting without Haaland. I need to get into a position where I've got the transfers where if I want to put him in, it's not going to cost me a -8 every week. So I need to start moving forward and looking ahead. That might not be the case for you, but generally speaking, I think that's a role. Ali Bismo says, hi James, need cash to upgrade Saka to Salah. Do I sell Gordon to Mitoma or Muniz to Pedro? Wildcard in 6 locked. I think the Mitoma option, my friend Ali. Doris Sam McGuire says, hey James, another one on wildcard game week 6. Saka and Isak out. Haaland and Rodgers in 2 free transfers, or upgrade my 4.5 forward to Pedro and bench Muniz. Isak, cheers. Look, don't do what I do, mate. And if someone's asked me about putting Haaland in their team, I'm just going to say yes. So I would be taking that option, Zara, without the full context of the rest of your team. Shani Russell says, Big James, as usual, no questions, just a normal request. 1, ask the freeloaders to drop a like. Freeloaders, drop a like, please. 2, please rub that noggin to bring us luck from the FPL gods. I want another 90 point. I don't know if I should, because you've asked me to do that last 2 weeks and I've had red arrows, so maybe it's unlucky for me. No, go on. The content's more important, isn't it? Ashik says, hi James, thoughts on Captain Trent this week. He was under consideration for me at the start of the week, and I don't hate it. I've told you, it's a psychological, I can't really pin it, and it's not, it's like gambler's fallacy. You shouldn't think like this. But I'm almost put off by the fact that they've already kept 3 clean sheets. I'm asking what the likelihood is of them making it 4. And I mentioned on our Patreon pod this morning that when Mark comes on COTC, he always gives off the impression that even in the big games, he always fancies Forest to get a goal. So I'm not massively keen. If you're really short of options, look, that's a reliable, he'll get you to 75 to 80 odd minutes again, you should imagine. I don't mind it. He's probably lower down the list than I would have had him for me personally at the start of the week. Gazza's Flute says, on wildcard now, thoughts on Havertz for next 2 games with no Odegaard, planning on bringing in Gabriel and Saka for 6. So Havertz in now means 3 Arsenal in 6. Yeah, I understand it, the thought process and logic behind that. Would it be easier maybe to put Gabriel in now, and if you don't like it this week, to bench it? Is that an option, subject to the other players in your squad? There has to be a little bit of concern about Havertz's positioning. If Odegaard is out, and Mikel Arteta certainly didn't confirm that, but the reports from Norway suggest that Odegaard will be out for this forthcoming period of probably up to roundabouts game week 7. That's what the people in Norway are suggesting. So there has to be a doubt over Havertz's positioning. That said, I also have my own suspicions that it will stay as the 9 in these next 2. I guess as well with Gabriel, you'd also probably, if you want to bench him this week, you definitely want to bench him probably next week, I'd guess. So what's your setup for that? Can you change an enabling defender so you can have a Dunk or a Van Heck in there so you can play that for the next 2 weeks if you really don't want to look at it? This is an example we use with obviously Barco and Gabriel / Saliba in pre-season, which I think people would have loved if that option was on the table right now. It's not, obviously. I don't know, a lot of potential power forwards in between the next 2 weeks for Havertz, I think. It's also okay to take a -4 and bring in all 3 in game week 6. Not ideal, particularly with one being a defensive one, but that might be an option for you. If I had to start one of them Arsenal players now, I'd rather it was Saka, but I get if it's Saka, that's possibly denying you Palmer or Salah, so I understand that. Yeah, okay, look, he'll be consistent. Just feels like, I don't want to use the word, but it feels like he's not optimal at the moment, right? There'll be better assets, you'd imagine, over the next 2 than Havertz. FC Paul says, hi James, thoughts on the Barclays men trend? Who springs to mind for you? I'm sworn not to speak about it because Clayton said he wants to cover it on the Clayton and James show next week on Wednesday. And I don't understand it too much because I don't know what the cut-off period is. They understand what's going on. It's nice to see all these nostalgic vids on socials and stuff. It's cool. But I don't know what the defined timeline is, so I don't want to commit to it till then. Clayton said he wants to talk about it on Wednesday. Taxi driver says, hello James, what is better Liverpool trio? Salah, Diaz, Robertson, or Salah, Szoboszlai, Trent? So what you're asking me is Diaz and Robertson or Szoboszlai and Trent, right? I think Trent is comfortably worth that million more over Robertson at the moment. That said, it feels like Diaz is comfortably worth it over Szoboszlai. I wouldn't go to Liverpool for the sake of it. I would honestly, on that at the moment, I'd be going Salah, Trent, and I'd probably be looking at a different player from a different team. KCG says, hi James, thanks for your time. Big derby at the weekends. Which is the key player battle for the results to go either way? Good question. There's so many now to define this, and it's difficult because we obviously don't really know what Arsenal are going to do. We know Rice is out. We assume Odegaard's out. There's so many different things Arsenal can do. So it does feel obvious to say that area of the pitch and how Arsenal defend, I think particularly the half spaces against Tottenham feels important. But I very much feel if Dominic Solanke has a good day, we'll win the game. That's how it feels to me at the moment. So I'm going to say the Solanke battle with Gabriel / Saliba. Roseanne Fleur says, what to do with Nkunku and Kwanzaa? Will their value go up incoming if they start playing and score? I don't think there's anything that's going to drag Kwanzaa's value back. If Nkunku started playing and scoring, great, but it's hard to envisage it at the moment, Roseanne. Even little things like Palmer being left out of their Conference League squad. It's very difficult to visualise it at the moment. I think Kwanzaa will get the odd start now and again. Like, if you're asking because you've got the two players... No, Nkunku, I really needs moving on, I think, unfortunately. And I'm sorry that's the case, because I really thought it was a great option in pre-season. Naylor MUFC says, Salah stronger captain now that there is Haaland uncertainty. He could come on for a sub appearance. Okay. So, if Haaland, let's say, if he's not physically or mentally well enough, as Pep suggested might be the case, why is this a sub appearance? He starts or he doesn't, right? Surely. What good is him being on the bench going to do for anyone? Honestly, if I had Haaland, I'd be literally zero doubt in my mind he'd be getting the armband this week. Wouldn't even be questioning it. Richard Nyquist says, afternoon James, on a wildcard, struggling to decide between Diaz or Robertson as the third Liverpool asset. Will come off of either one in game week 6 or 7. Any preference? Yeah, I'd attack the attacking players at the moment, mate. If you've got Trent on board, it'd be the second attacker. Skip, it says, hi James, I know you've covered this a little before, but if you could pinpoint a game week to target a wild card with after game week 10, what would it be based on fixture swings, etc.? For me, game week 18. But I think 14 is reasonable. I think 16 is reasonable. But for me, game week 18 would be the one that I'd identified. David Passamar says, bench Robinson or Smith Rowe. Play the attacker there, mate. Greg Frost says, any fears about Haaland starting? I'm just going to skip that, mate. Thanks for your question. The most likely thing this weekend is that Haaland scores, looks up to the sky and pays his tribute. Listen, neither of us can be there and understand what the mental impact is, right? None of us. He had an incident a couple of years ago where a grandparent passed away and he still played. Right? There's not. I don't know. Maybe this matters more. Who knows? None of us are there to know. I suspect he probably plays. And if he doesn't play, then that's what your vice captain is for. Stephen Carr says, hello, James. Good luck for Sunday. Assuming Conser is fit, who would you start, Conser or Porro? That's a closer one. But based on my predictions for this weekend, and I'm backing Everton to score, I'll stick with my boy Pedro. Just checking if we've got... so Unai Emery confirms Ollie Watkins will be included on Saturday. This is from Ben Dinnery's timeline. He's progressively getting better and being in the squad, thinking tomorrow he'll be available to play. We don't have big issues after the international break. Everton game comes too soon for Tyrone Mings, Boubacar Kamara. So it suggests Ezri Konsa is fit as well. So I mean, yeah, that's I think that's going to be Watkins captain for me with what I've got this weekend. But yeah, Pedro Porro. I think if you ask, I'd be interested. Tweet Lee Jackson and ask him what he thinks of that. Our Aston Villa correspondent. See what he says. I'd be interested. John Solly says, hi James, which 5 million defender would you choose for the next 2 fixtures only? Dunk, Munoz, someone else? Yeah, I mean, if you could go Munoz or Mitchell for the next 2, possibly slight preference on that. So yeah, we'll go with Munoz. Vertica says, hey James, have to sacrifice Bruno or Jota for Salah on a free for the next 2 weeks before wildcard in 6. Who do I lose? It's Bruno at the moment, isn't it, mate? He's been very unlucky, but I think that's the right answer. Alistair Hargreaves says, as someone that hasn't used a triple captain, what's the best week? It's like, how long's a piece of string, mate? The first good double game week for a Haaland or a Salah, which, you know, it's probably going to be sometime in and or around the Carabao Cup final. Or it'll be like game week 33, I think, from memory would be an option. That might also be a bench boost week. But it's not going to be a while. Yeah, the best single game week is gone. Was Haaland against Ipswich, and the reason that was clearly best, and those who did it, like, congrats, was because of the clear understanding that Haaland had 7 days off before and 7 days off afterwards in terms of competitive games. That doesn't arrive again. His cup game's going to be either side of games now moving forward. So for a single game week, the best option's gone. I don't think you'd use it this weekend. Brentford at home doesn't feel quite strong enough. When they've got other teams at home, like I said, as a European game, like before or afterwards, it's just not as strong. So it's not for a while, mate. Christian Nikolov says, cheers, James. On wildcard, he's going no Haaland. Palmer or Saka, Watkins or Isak, 2 best 4.5 million defenders to cover Rico Lewis, Dunk and Mikalenko. I like the balance of that because Everton's fixtures obviously get better after this week. The captaincy on Ollie Watkins, then that's definitely something that could happen, it feels like to me. So Mikalenko, decent pick. I'd just say on the Brighton one, that's really short term. If you're looking at a different rotation, maybe even like to cover you all the way through where you'd always start one, consider like Duncan, Ethan Pinnock, maybe. In the same way I know people are considering like for Bruggen and Flecken at the moment. So I don't mind that as an option as well. Who's next? James. Oh, I didn't really answer your question, did I, Christian, on the other? Palmer over Saka because of the timing. Watkins over Isak because of the timing. James Brennan says, hi James, would you do Robinson to Lewis this week? Won't need the transfer for future Haaland plans in 7. Cheers, mate. No, I don't think there's enough in that. And looking at Lewis's next 2, no, I don't think that's a strong enough move. James OO says, afternoon James, on wildcard, is Havertz now a no-go if he's likely to play in midfield? Also, what are your thoughts on Van den Berg eventually regularly starting games for Brentford in the next few games? Be great if he did with Vandenberg, but there isn't a sign of it at the moment. I know Tom Med's been quite happy with how Nathan Collins has been performing so far this season, so there's no immediate sign that that's going to happen. And if Brentford go to a back five tomorrow with 3 out-and-out centre-backs and he plays, I don't know how much you should read into that either. Again, a kind of repeat on Havertz earlier, I don't think we can be sure that he will move back into midfield. I wouldn't describe him as a no-go. With the question a little while ago, someone who seems keen to go there at the moment. He'll tick over. Mustafa Gaming says, hi James, hope you have a great weekend. I tripped Captain Haaland for his haul, bench boosted next week without Haaland and Salah. Trying to finish as high as I can without them all season. Cheers, good luck. Alex Allegrato, have a good game with James. You too, Alex, hope all's well. Ali Boskurt says, hope you're well. Ben White and Rodgers out for Duncan Diaz for a -4 wildcard game week 6, so 2 weak punts. By the way, I already own Jota and Salah, so triple Liverpool attack. Good luck, mate. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing it, mate. It's a -4 specifically for Luis Diaz when Rodgers is playing what might be the weakest defence in the league this weekend, as they don't have Jared Brantwaite by the sounds of it. So I wouldn't be doing that. Another Hoops says, hey James, best of luck this week. Apologies if this has already been answered. Any news, Conser Watkins? Yep, just covered, so I'll skip, but thank you. Nick Giordano, would you do Porro to Trent or Vardio to Trent or roll transfer? Got 2 free transfers and I'm wildcarding anytime soon. Cheers. Do you know what? Really ugly week to sell Vardio because we've got a good home fixture. But that's probably what I'd be considering doing. Actually, yeah. FPL Developer says, hi James, no question, just keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Colin Johnson says on wildcard, Konsa or Robinson, Minter or Smith Rowe. I mean, again, looks like Konsa will be alright. So yeah, I've Konsa on the basis that he's alright. Let's go with that. And I think, again, timing Minter for me. And for Bruggen or Flecken, here's the thing, the interesting with that rotation, you will play Flecken a lot more between now and game week 12 than for Bruggen. If you have both and you're asking which to start, then that's clearly for Bruggen this week. Woodstock Chris, just a huge thank you for everything so far this season. Smash the like, folks, and subscribe too. Thank you, Chris. Apologies for those who might have been losing the stream briefly now and again. Justin Dyer says, please smash the like, subscribe and share buttons for the awesome free content. Much love to the Planet FPL team. Thank you, Justin. Maca9 says, McDonald's or Burger King? I'm a McDonald's kind of guy, mate. I'm simple. Jamar says, start Mazzarawi or Robinson? Probably Robinson. Close one, that. Joe Pickerel, FPL question, who do I bench? Saka, Smith Rowe, Rodgers, Muniz. Actually lean towards Saka currently, but that obviously means he will outscore the other 3. From that lot, reluctantly Smith Rowe. Ethan Justin says, hi mate, also always plan, to hold out on getting Haaland until game week 7. But does there become a point where plans should just go out the window, already way behind in some of the mini leagues? Yes, but I guess it depends what your tolerance is like, right? My tolerance is probably a lot higher at the moment. Otherwise, I'd just be breaking the team and putting him in, wouldn't I? So my tolerance is quite high at the moment. I don't know how good yours is. Like, if you can't tolerate it, deal with it and put him in. I'm not sitting here and telling anyone else don't own Erling Haaland. I'm not going to do that. It's a bit mad if I do. I've chosen a path for strategy. You've also chosen that path, Ethan. I would say with Arsenal and Newcastle in 5 and 6, you had a strategy for 7. Generally speaking, stick to it. I'm not going to say anything stupid about it, no more hat-tricks and stuff like that, because I got killed for that last week. So I'm not putting him in. It's clear for me. I think even if Watkins had been ruled out, I wasn't forcing him in, I think I probably would have just gone and bought like João Pedro, I think. Christopher C says, hi mate, play 3 of Rodgers, Pedro, Dunk, Robinson, Konsa and Jackson. The 3 attackers, mate. Andrew Grundy says, hi James, got Ben White first bench. Should I start him over one of my sputtering Fulham attacking duo? No, probably not. Particularly with Odegaard out, doesn't help him offensively, so probably not, no. I'm not against people playing Arsenal defence this week, by the way, as kind of already said. This is a particular game, though, where I think it would be fair to assume, most likely, it doesn't mean Ben White can't get an attacking return, of course he has, but Gabriel and Saliba hold more offensive threat than Ben White on paper for this particular fixture. Andrew says, feel the narrative about Arsenal's absences is over the top and Arteta might serve up a 0-0 or 1-0. Arsenal are absolutely capable of keeping a clean sheet in any fixture. Any fixture. No doubt about that. John Langan says, hi James, what sort of knowledge do you have on the League of Ireland? Very little, I must be honest. Can you remember which Irish team Tottenham played in Europa League and in which year? Yeah, we played Shamrock Rovers in 11-12, beat them 3-1 at home, 4-0 away, which included Harry Kane's first competitive goal for Tottenham, which, yes, incredibly, was with Harry Redknapp as manager. Steamroller says, hello, legends. I love your podcast. You're doing something very different and creative. Real, proper, old school way of looking. I love pods with supporters of different Premier League teams. Best regards from Serbia. Thank you, mate. Wish you well. Elron Cupboard says, how do you think Sancho will do at Chelsea? I think they've brought him in to play on the right. But Madueke's on a streak, isn't he? So I think patience is going to be required. I personally find it difficult to foresee him getting back to the player that Manchester United paid an obscene amount of money for. I find that very difficult. I don't look at him and think, wow, when Jadon Sancho rediscovers his form, he's going to get back in the England squad. Like, truthfully, I don't feel that way. You know, good luck to him. I hope he does. I hope he does get back to that player and, you know, becomes a real threat. I just don't see it getting back in. We got Saka, Bowen, and Madueke came on the other night in that position. These other players can obviously play wide right for England as well. No, I think that's probably best gone, personally. But hopefully, whatever issues he had at Manchester United are behind him and he can rediscover himself. Jamar B says, hey James, start to bench one. So this is much easier written if you just go bench one. Robinson, Lewis, Matt Suarez. There's no way that's Lewis, mate. So it's probably just Matt Suarez. John Bevan. Sorry, mate. A few gremlins today, unfortunately. Naylor MUFC says, start Saliba or Robinson. Again, what I've covered on the set piece, I'd probably just play Saliba. Neil Kager wants everyone to smash a like. Yeah, come on, people, smash a like. You're very welcome, pal. Thank you. Owen Chamley, thank you very much. Mark 505, ever worn a Stony to a game? Is that like a Stone Island or something like that? Otherwise, I don't know what that question refers to. Either way, I'm going to assume the answer is no. Rory says, chance of Savio starting. Potential. We know he's back in training. So a possible. I do think that Jack Grealish played pretty well at West Ham and has played a good couple of games for England, and there should be a desire to try and keep him in the team because I think Jack Grealish needs form. So then it becomes a Savinho versus Doku fight. I would say it's probably less likely than likely. Owen says, dilemma is Cucurella and Gordon to Trent and Minter worth a -4. Thank you. Probably not, because on the face is Trent worth the -4 over Cucurella. Trent is one of them rare ones with you can make the case for the -4 for him. I don't like -4s for defenders, and because you're downgrading in the other position, that's effectively what this is for, isn't it? Is the -4 to put Trent in. If you're taking a real long-term view that you've got to get to Trent, then I accept it. Is it going to be worth it just for this week? It's probably doubtful. Benayu says, would you go with Trent or Jota? Trent for me at the moment, yeah. Yeah, thanks Greg. We got that info on Watkins. Mustafa Gaming says, how did you collaborate with Clayton? Come about used to being you with Suj. Love your show, great content as always. I mean that's all collaborated via Suj essentially. So Clayton was working with us for the company, and it came about through that. So it's still a collaboration essentially through Suj. Hunter Serin says, hey James, bench 1, Rogers, Madueke, João, Pedro. Rogers with extreme reluctance. Danish says, Watkins and Conte are both fit. Yeah, we got that. Sean McCarthy says, hi James, hope you're well. Would you take a -4 for Mitoma over Traore? Thanks. Probably not. I mean, Lewis James said this on Clash of Correspondence again. Yes, he said like Adama Traore is playing well. So probably not, no. Matthew Archer says, what do you think of Murillo to Robertson this week? Boxing me out of triple Arsenal for game week 6. Unless I take hits, 1 free transfer and wild card game week 8. Well, the other thing, it might box you back towards Matthews, a wild card in game week 6, possibly. And maybe that needs reconsidering if you're boxing yourself out of it. That you need to, Murillo to Robertson. Yeah, cool, great. But were you going to play Murillo this week? These are questions I can't answer from what's in the question. On the face of it, yeah, Murillo to Robertson, fine. Mike Chang says, hey, James, loving your work. I know you covered this loads, but I had 2 free transfers going into game week 4 wildcard. Will I have 4 free transfers in game week 6 when I look to bring in some Arsenal assets? You've got 2 free transfers now and your wildcard in. So you won't have any extra next week. You'll just have 3 next week and then 4 in 6. Yeah, I think that's right. Andy Pint says, I took your advice from last week, sold Saka and Isak. I advised that for Salah and Welbeck. Oh, well, look at me go. My only decision is bench Smith Rowe or Garnacho. Cheers. I'd play Garnacho. Jameson, Murphy to Sinistera. That's punny. That's not the one that would spring to mind. Personally, if I was looking at Bournemouth, I'd go to Anfield next week. It's not Chelsea this week. It's not the one I'd be looking at the moment, mate. Hill Billy says, hey James, which single player would make the best 11 if you could clone them? In relation to what, mate? Like, can we have 2 Lionel Messis? Sure, mate. Chad Scott says, Bailey replacements, any update on availability? No, I don't think that was mentioned, actually. I assume. Let's see if I can get a double check on that. I assume that he'll be unavailable, Leon Bailey. That's my guess. I don't know if there's been an update. I think it was already assumed that Bailey would be out this week. Let's see if Scout have put anything on Leon Bailey. No. I think it's assumed that Bailey's going to be out this week. Yeah, I don't mind the Garnacho punt. Chad also mentioning Kudos. Yeah, consistent. Minta's fine. If it were me, I'd been wanting to get to Eze, and I'd be looking at that. I don't mind the Garnacho punt. I really don't, Chad. Really don't mind it. So, yeah, I don't mind if you want to punt Garnacho, mate. And you're very welcome, Chad. Andrew Savage says, hi, James. Playing it your way. Sorry, mate. Says, and now I don't have Salah and Haaland. Sorry, mate. Who will be captain this week? Love you. As I've said, I think I'm going to go Watkins, mate. Owen Jones says, hey, James. Great to see you, as always. I've got Harwood Bellis starting. Decent fixture game week 5. Wildcard 6. Is it worth the free transfer to move Hall to dunk Villa defender to avoid starting Harwood Bellis? Did take the 0.1 loss yesterday. I have an inkling. I said this on our Patreon pod this morning. I have an inkling, and I think I mentioned it on the Monday podcast after they lost at Brentford as well. I have an inkling that they might move to a back 4, and if they do so, I think Harwood Bellis might be the one that misses out. So I'd be making the move, but I think a lot of people would disagree with that opinion of mine in terms of Southampton changing system. Owen also says, do you think Ten Hag is gone if Man United lose to Southampton? Nah, not if they just lose that. No, I think it might come to a point where there's a change, but I don't visualise it being quite yet. I don't think it's, if you lose tomorrow, you're sad. No, I don't think that's the case. And thank you very much. Ufa says, hi, I messed up picking Armstrong instead of Pedro. Worth 1 free transfer to swap. Armstrong got a good pair after Man United, but I might wildcard game week 6. Cheers. Yeah, you almost answered your own question there, Ufa. I think, yeah, it's make the move, mate. Jack Tasker, best cheap defender up to 4.7. Well, it might be Rico Lewis, mightn't it? In the immediate, Konsa, and I've seen as well, Emery's confirmed that he will be in the squad tomorrow, so Konsa. I'm really concerned about the Luca Dean pick. I don't think he plays tomorrow and Tuesday. I think Maatson will play one of them. I couldn't tell you which way round. So I think Konsa, Mark Gay throw another one out. That's a cheap one at the moment, isn't it, to potentially have a look at? There's a couple for you. Reece C says, hi James, FPL team is set, so a bit different. Best restaurant in North London, Coys. There's this fried chicken place you might have heard of on Tottenham High Road called Chiking, which is classy. Best restaurant in North London, I probably haven't been to it, mate. Alex, thank you for posting your team. I'm not going to read it all out because by the time I read 15 names out loud, mate, I'm gonna forget half of it, mate. So I'm sorry, but I wish you the very best of luck with your wild card. Jameson says he wants to default to rolling. Ben Meekin says, would you go early on transfer if you have the funds to wait till leaks tomorrow? Well, what leaks are we expecting tomorrow? United's the early kickoff. I mean, if there's price change tonight that's going to be important to you, I would make moves tonight at this stage of the season, yeah. Right, I see well gone past 3 o'clock and I didn't notice, guys. So apologies to those whose questions I haven't got to. If you want to tag me on Twitter and ask your question, there's lots of you. Sorry, I've obviously not got to all of you. If you want to tag me on Twitter and ask your question, I will answer it. If I don't, it's because you've been muted. In which case, you might want to tell someone and say, hey, ask James why I'm muted, because I will answer you if you tweet me. Don't slide in my DMs. I'll probably just ignore it. I wish you all the very best for the weekend. Hope your arrows are green. For those watching on the stream, smash a like. Next week's content that's freely available to everybody, I can tell you, will be main podcast game review on Monday, hopefully with a destroyed hangover, please, because I'm only going out drinking if we win. Tuesday, People's Poll podcast, most likely. Wednesday, Clayton and myself. Thursday's Clash of Correspondence is Southampton versus Leicester next week with Matt Samuel and Aaron Lagor. And Ask James next Friday as well. Probably same time. It could be earlier next week, unfortunately. I say unfortunately just because I've got a little less news on the team news. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. I can tell you our podcast next week will include a Q&A on Monday, UCL Fantasy Tuesday, me and Clates reacting to Sunday's North London Derby on Wednesday, Money in Football on Thursday, and our Game Week 5 preview next Friday. If you want to support the show, do it because you want to support the content or because you would like additional content. It's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. And for those on the audio, 5-star reviews go a really long way. If you see anything, you want to share it, tell your mates. Don't tell your mates because the content's good, whatever. Just share shit. It really helps. That's a really crap ending. So I'm just going to say, have a great weekend, everyone. Deadline stream on YouTube, 10 a.m. UK time tomorrow. And for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, Mansholt.